But you got to have confidence in the old stories, because they still exist. Now, that tells me that they're valid.
Yeah.
You know, we don't even have to search for validity. They are what they are.
Yeah.
And sure, we know that Huareare was not a real person. It was a process, personified. You know, whether you call it the big bang theory or whatever, Māoris just gave it a name. And what a clarity!
Yeah.
The clarity of the name that they've given that whole process of the world and universe coming into space and coming into its being. And that the kōrero highlights that every star has its own reo. Yeah. Every star has its own connection. It vibrates at its own thing. And how they describe that, then what does that leave you? It leaves you well centered and identified in the whole. Man, that's hard to do. I wrote a program, I think I may have shared it with you once, for young people getting on the verge of getting booted out of school. And what I found with these guys, invariably all of them were good artists. Yeah. Not only were they good artists, they were good at PlayStation. Mm-hmm. And so by writing a program around that, the first part of it was, and we had 10 days, 2 weeks to deliver this program. Well, we got some SIFS funding, and so we got some SIFS funding to run the program for 16 kids, and rough as guts, but good kids. And the criteria was they have to be good at PlayStation. That was the criteria. You have to be good, and obviously the other one was that they weren't doing too well at school. But that was a given, because there's heaps. So we tested them on their PlayStation skills and said, yep, you're in. And then we took them, part of it, because we knew they were all going to be good at art. So the journey was, come on, we'd give them a porphyry, then we would spend 2 days learning about the whare. And in those 2 days, we had this Hawaiian. His wife was Māori and was in Kapahaka, but he had gone to the Maurako and Makoia Island. And so he was fluent in the reo, fluent in the Hawaiian language, and knew heaps about Te Ao Māori. And so together they created this program. These fellas learned to haka, learned about where they came from, to me, and we learned about the whare tupuna. And it was interesting that the whare was o Tawhao, and Dan Harrison carved all these in all the po, but they had soldiers, postmen, what looked like postmen, it might have been the old soldier's uniform, but had memory, because this is in Te Awamutu, and had the history of Te Awamutu in the po right around. So it was kind of interesting. So when we had to go through the po, not only did we integrate Te Ao Māori, but the modern history, or the post 1840, that history they were learning about. And so we brought in a new language for them, cosmos, the heavens, and and all that sort of stuff. And listening to them on the side, and they always say, "Go ask the cosmos, mate. What's that all about?" And so got them asking those questions. And all these guys were in Kapahaka. We didn't know that, but realised they were all in Kapahaka, and they didn't know this stuff.
Wow.
So that tells you something about Kapahaka.
Yeah.
It's just about performing, for some.
Yeah.
And these guys, they were just there performing. They could perform haka, but knew nothing about the haka. Whereas, and so the haka that they learnt in those 2 days, they knew its whakapapa. They knew when to use it, why it's used, etc., etc. And so from there, the kaupapa was, what is it to be Māori? Yeah, That was the kaupapa. And they were to draw, the goal was to draw this, we had this 16 foot by 16 foot mural of what it was to be Māori. And it was on A4 size. So you can imagine 16 foot wide of A4 drawings. And right in the middle they chose Te Ata. And so she was there right in the middle, and then all the rest. The majority of pictures were what? Depicting what, do you think? Violence.
I was going to say tariwha.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Warriors. Why? Violence. Fight. Fight the bad guys. And the majority of it was that. Yeah. Still got the artwork somewhere.
Wow.
And then we took them from that. So that was the goal. Then we set them up in a desktop publishing system. So they were to draw, then they were to render, then they were to manipulate on Photoshop. All in 10 days. They knew more because some of them were doing computer studies and they were working on Photoshop. They had done more in 10 days on Photoshop than they had done in a year. Now you tell me, why does it take a year for kids to learn Photoshop? Well, it's the curriculum, it's the system. Where in 10 days, they were all manipulating, some better than others, but they were all manipulating on Photoshop. Skills.